Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go as a pilot. It took me basically 20 years to get a command with South African Airways, and when you go and apply for a position like that, it's basically a for life position because you go in on a seniority list and you work your way up the ladder.
Hello, Marc.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm fine, thank you. It's so lovely to meet you here on Zoom.
Yes, likewise.
Yeah. Where are you based?
I'm living in South Africa in the Western Cape at the moment. I'm living in Stilbaai on our family farm.
Oh, I see. Oh, I know Stilbaai. It's beautiful.
Oh,
yeah.
It's magnificent. Yeah.
But, and tell me, you are an airline pilot.
Yes.
I would love to know your story. You know, what initiated, being the interest in aviation.
Well, I started after school. I went and did my private license, and I've been flying flat out ever since, except for this period now when COVID struck and the airline working for South African Airways was decimated, and that was already in the pipeline before COVID hit. But COVID was one of the nails in its coffin, and I haven't been flying since then. I've been keeping my license going, but I haven't had an opportunity to fly again.
Really? But now, tell me, you say you started after school, but as a young boy, were you what made the interest in aviation?
My father flew privately when I was a little boy, and I enjoyed going with him and flying with him, and that kind of sparked the interest in it. And then just once the bug bit, it was just taking it from there.
Yeah, but this is what I realized during the time is it's this with you in the aviation. It's something that started, from a young age, that it's something sparked, and then you're all in it. But was it your training? What did you train through an airline?
Initially, privately, all done privately. In South Africa, there weren't many opportunities to do it through the Air Force or through sponsorships. Fortunately, my father had the means to help me pay for it. So I did private license in George, and then in Cape Town, I did my commercial license. I flew in Namibia, went and flew charters for about 3 years, doing the bush flying. That was fantastic because it was very free, and you were basically a young person taking tourists around all over the beautiful country in nice weather, and a good way to learn and get grounded in flying. And then I flew for Air Namibia for about a year on their Beech 1900s. And then after that, I flew for SA Express for about 3 years, just under 3 years, on their Dash 8s. They were a fledgling company at the time. And then from 1997, I've been with South African Airways. I've been blessed with a nice long career there, and flew all the A300s, which was a nice 3-man operation, which is quite unusual in this day and age. And that was quite a good experience. And then 70s. Yeah.
No, so in that time, you say a 3-man operation. Explain more to me what that lingo means.
That technology, it was the first Airbus that Airbus created or made, and it was based on the similar cockpit to the 747, and it had a flight engineer's panel. So we needed a flight engineer to manage the fuel and some of the aircraft systems, hydraulics and the pressurization. Where the more modern airplanes, those systems are all automated. So it was nice in the sense that when you had a problem, you had an extra mind to troubleshoot with and to discuss issues. with the depth of experience at South African Airways, it was a great learning ground because there was so much information and wealth brought through from all the generations past. And
yeah, I remember I did an interview with Rian van Zyl, and he actually told me that as a pilot, you sort of know also, certain things that you can fix from where you are in the cockpit, or how to deal with that.
Yeah. One of the big things about flying is it teaches you to troubleshoot and to prioritize and to manage your resources and your time. It's one of the most critical factors of aviation. And the best leaders, you will notice throughout your career, are the ones who can prioritize well, and you can bring out the best in people around them, and not try and do everything themselves. You can delegate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it's a team effort in the cockpit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when you did the initial commercial flying, you said to build up hours, but then you fly alone. Then it's just you as the pilot flying in an aircraft.
Yes, you're flying a little airplane, normally 6-seaters. I mean, the ones that I flew were little Cessna 210s and 310s. That's a small 6-seater with 1 or 2 engines. And they fly at around 300 kilometers an hour, just over the 310 was a little bit quicker. But in a country like Namibia, that put everything within about a 2 to 3 hour range maximum. For the furthest places, Katima Mulilo, which is right on the tip of the Caprivi Strip, and that took you about 3.5 hours in a 210.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we did quite a lot of mercy flying as well. That was quite interesting flying because then you would go off in a little 310, normally with a medic, and go and land on a road in the middle of the desert, or on a bush strip at night, lit up by car lights, and pick up someone who's been injured or wounded or something like that. And it was very interesting and exciting flying in hindsight.
Well, thinking of it that way, because it's also very unique that that you could have done that type of flying to build up your hours, say compared to other countries where people have different scenarios where they fly. Do you think that there's also that type of thing in South Africa that gives the pilots a different sort of experience, or a different way of flying?
Absolutely, yeah. I would say in the international arena, the best way to build up hours is through instruction. So you're basically learning by rote and teaching your younger colleagues how to fly. And this bush flying, it's more of an independent flying where you're left to your own devices from an early age, and you have to make it work. I mean, I've been stuck out in the bush where you have to hand start the plane with if the starter doesn't work or the battery's flat, you have to start it by hand. You have to hand swing the propeller, otherwise you're not going anywhere. And at the time there was no cell phones or telephones or GPS even. If you got lost, you had to find where you were going. And you can imagine, I mean, I don't know if you've seen Namibia, there's not many landmarks there. So your map reading skill improved quite dramatically with that kind of flying.
Yeah, and of course you have to, you probably look at nature as well to guide you in certain ways with or you have to know the territory a little bit.
Yeah, you learn to recognize landmarks and like a little dry riverbed, and like a little hill that's prominent that you can see quite a long way off. You can pick those up on maps, and yeah, it's a nice environment to learn in. to grow up in, as it were.
But now tell me your career at SAA. You said that it's been a while that you could, and I've also heard somebody else said that that you noticed that things are going downward.
Well, I don't know if you were aware that the union that we were with, SAPA, from a very early on, we could already discern that they put Dudu Myeni in Jacob Zuma's then, I don't know if she still is, a girlfriend. And they put her in as the chairperson, and she was very vindictive and bullying and manipulative, and just steamrolled her way and got rid of anyone who opposed her. And she very quickly set up a pilfering network there at SAA that everyone was powerless to stop. I mean, we were witness to it, but we could do nothing. And we instituted early on a delinquent director proceedings against her, but it took an immense amount of time, and it only came to fruition after the company was bankrupt and already in business rescue. So it was closing the horse after the horse had bolted. The shareholder itself was negligent in not taking action at the time, because if it was your company and you're losing billions as a shareholder, I mean, you would never allow that to happen. So unfortunately, that's a microcosm of what's happening in South Africa, and we're witnessing it everywhere around us. With PRASA, I see they found 3,000 workers on their payroll that aren't doing anything. They're ghost workers, for example, and just incompetence abounds everywhere.
Yeah. But now it's really tragic, because the South African Airways was a very respected airline, and the pilots as well. I've seen a documentary, and South Africa was quite on the forefront years ago in aviation, because I heard on this documentary, or I think that in America, the Boeings now. I don't have the right terminology to say, but apparently Boeing used South African pilots to do upgrades and things, or to understand what had needed to be done on the aircraft because of the flying conditions in South Africa.
Yeah, we were instrumental with both manufacturers. I mean, we were one of the launchers with Airbus for the A300. That was in the sanction era, and before that, I mean, Boeing, the 747s, they used to use what's called bump thrust to get airborne, because Johannesburg is hot and high, they call it. The air is thinner, and with the higher temperatures and the thinner air, you needed much more performance to get the same weight airborne. So an airplane performance degrades quite significantly the higher you go and the warmer you get. So you do. Like, for example, a 747 or these big twins, they can carry a full load up to probably around about 50 degrees at sea level, where that temperature drops down to about 25 at Johannesburg. So the performance degradation, especially above even 20 degrees in Johannesburg, the airplanes have to leave payload behind in order to be able to meet climb gradients. Boeing at the time experimented with water injection and bump shop and engineering departments at South African Airways were legendary at the time. I mean, this was before the time I joined in '97, but their jet shop could produce better air, could fine-tune those engines to the point where they could produce about 105% of what they were supposed to produce.
Really?
And using water injection, which cooled the core down, so they could produce more thrust, and add methanol, which also increased the power output of those engines for a short time. And Boeing and South African Airways, we were one of the few people that were allowed to do that at the time.
Amazing. But I've also heard that if you take the whole history of aviation, how South African Airways started initially, that this is really so tragic what is happening at the moment.
It is, yes. It's very sad because they are pushing their agenda of affirmative action above everything else, at the expense of everything. And actually the pendulum has swung completely the other way. If you look, it's almost historically exactly balanced, where the ANC was outlawed for exactly 30 years, and it's now been 28 years that they are in power, and they're reaching the end of their term, as it were. That even their own people are disgruntled with them, and the writing's on the wall. The pendulum is away now. It's going to swing back, and hopefully there'll be a balance where society can work in unity. I mean, this BEE thing is all well and good, but it's at the cost of the well-being of the country and everyone's economic development, because it's not working.
Yeah, but this is what I realized also during the pandemic, is that how important aviation is in our lives. It's only, we think of it as just we just accept it as being here, but it's really not that old industry, and yet we are just flying all over the world, and so many businesses. And I've been also realizing here how many artists also fly over the world, for concerts and things like that. And in all types of business, we really need to travel by plane. But now in South Africa, if the biggest airline company went bankrupt, what is the future then for the pilots and for the country, for the economy?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if you know, Comair has also gone insolvent, and so that's another huge company that's gone. So they had about, I can't remember exactly, I think it was about 30 airplanes. So South African Airways had about 64 at the peak, if I remember correctly, and now it's down to 4 in use, 5 or something like that. And Safair has expanded quite dramatically. So the private guys that were not indebted and that had a fairly loose footprint that was ready to expand quickly, they were able to capitalize. But anyone who had any semblance of debt was punished by this period where they weren't able to fly. So Semair and Airlink and Safair seem to be filling the void quite nicely. And then for the international travel, it's just the international carriers that are coming in at this stage. But yes, where it's going in the future.
But now for you, I mean, this must be very difficult, because you've had this pandemic, and then and I think there also a lot of pilots suffered, in the sense that you couldn't do anything, and you have to now also keep your licenses. What do you say? Like you have to keep up your flight tests and things that you do.
Yes, yeah. I've been maintaining my license. I've had to pay for the last 3 license renewals myself and do them. And at this stage, I don't even want to fly in South Africa anymore. I just perceive that the government don't want me here. The locals don't want me here. So I'm going to go look for work elsewhere. And at this stage, America looks good. I've got an application in for a specific type of visa where I can go and work and live there, and I'm hoping to hear back on that within the next month or 2. And there's lots of opportunities there. Unfortunately, even in Europe, you need the right to live and work there. And the Middle Eastern carriers, it's nice to go and work there, but the environment to live in is not ideal. So South Africa was a nice place to live and work, but that's changing, unfortunately. And the economic conditions that are imposed on us by the government are really limiting opportunities of people, and they're punishing you for wanting to stay in South Africa, and excessive taxes with no return, oppressive regime. Don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah, it's it's the sad thing that also now South Africa is losing all these pilots with great experience, because that seems to be what's happening now. That everybody has to leave. That they don't have a choice anymore.
Yes, exactly. There are a few opportunities, like with SAFair and Airlink, that are expanding a little bit, and Semair that are filling the voids. But yeah, it's nowhere near what it was. And obviously, you can also imagine they're taking advantage of the fact that the pilots are desperate, and they're offering fractions of what the salaries were like. And it's a highly skilled position, which takes a lot of dedication and hard work to get there and to work there. And it's soul destroying to sell yourself for a fraction of what you're worth. Yeah. And to be offered that and told, take it or leave it. Otherwise,
Well, this is something that I really thought about also a lot, is that the time that you spent working up to get to this position where you are. It took, like you said, it took all these years of training and flying and building up hours, and it's the financial cost as well. And I wonder if also the consumer has to take that into consideration when we always sort of shop for cheap flights and things like that we start realizing what we are getting, that it's for us just getting on a plane. But I mean, for you, it's really a big responsibility, and like you say, it's constant training and it's constant renewing your license and so on to get into that cockpit and to fly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go as a pilot. It took me basically 20 years to get a command with South African Airways, and when you go and apply for a position like that, it's basically a for life position, because you go in on a seniority list and you work your way up the ladder. And so now I've been at South African Airways for 23 years when they let me go, and now if I have to go and start somewhere else, I have to start at the bottom again as a junior co-pilot, unless I go and fly for a charter outfit or a corporate flying or something like that. If you go and fly for another legacy carrier, you start at the bottom of the seniority list, and I'm at 51. I'll only have another 14 years of flying. And it took me 14 years at South African Airways to get command. So if I were to go back to, say, United or something like that, I might expect to get 1 or 2 years of command there again. So it's a grave injustice that they've done, and they don't realize it. And unfortunately, time will tell. It's like in a couple of years' time, when everyone wants to fly and airplanes are falling out of the sky because of poor training and cutting costs on training and poor maintenance, and saving and skimping on costs where you can't see it. You pay down the line. Like, for example, those MAX airplanes that crashed. Both of those MAX airplanes, they blamed the aircraft. But if you look a little deeper, the crew that were on both of those airplanes, they said the captain was experienced, but he had only 5,000 hours. And that, in South African Airways terms, I joined South African Airways with 4,000 hours. And I got command with about 14,000 hours. And that guy who had 5,000 hours commanded only had about 100 hours experience on the airplane itself. And the co-pilot only had 200 hours. So he was basically flying on his own with an operator that's licensed to fly. And when you're under pressure like that, airplane, it was a runaway trim situation, but he just wanted to get the automatics back in because of his high workload. And the American carriers had a few instances of the same thing happening, but because of their much higher experience and the legacy carrier model, the captain and the co-pilot were far more experienced, and they could just fly the airplane, leave the automatics out, and it was a non-event. But by putting in the autopilot, the trim took over again and pushed the airplane into an out-of-trim situation, which they couldn't control. And both of those instances, the crash was actually induced by inexperienced crew.
Well, this and just proof again how important it is that you have this experience and that you put in all these hours to be able to fly.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to have experienced crew, and unfortunately, you can't microwave experience. You know, you can train guys to a high standard, but you can only see so much in 1 hour.
Yeah.
And every hour that you're flying, and the more diverse people and environments you're exposed to, the more you learn. And also, you know, we waited a long time for command, but that was a good thing because you learned all the different styles of command that you saw from the other guys, and you learned how you did and you didn't want to be. And it also is excellent tools for you one day when you do get command to manage your airplane in a professional manner, in a safe manner.
But now, for young pilots now coming up, wanting to fly, do you think there's any possibility in South Africa for the future?
Look, there's always going to be opportunities for guys that are prepared to work and to do it. My son has just started his commercial pilots. He's flying as an instructor at Lanseria, and he's enjoying it. He's loving it. The pay is not very good, and the hours are tough, but he's loving it, and he's having a great time. But it's there's no it's not cheap, and it's a lot of hard work, and he's got a long way to go before he can get to an airline and into command. But he's prepared to go the course, and his future prospects are also not in South Africa. He's also looking to leave as soon as he's got enough experience.
Was it flying with you that gave him also the bug?
I think so. Yeah, it's interesting because my father-in-law also flew for the Air Force, the South African Air Force. So my son's grandfather flew for the Air Force. My father flew a bit, but he wasn't flying when my son was born, and it was a long time ago. But all the exposure to the aviation talk, and also he flew with me from a very young age. They could come with on trips and things like that, which was very nice for them. And we got to see the world and travel and experience aviation, and it was a very valuable thing to be able to pass on. And it's important to be able to do that. It's not just about flying and about the career. You need to be able to build a life for your family as well. And they want to squeeze more and more and more work out of people for less and less and less money. So you need to also balance that with the life and being able to look after your family.
Yeah, and of course, as a pilot, you can't be at home all the time. I mean, you also fly. If you do long haul flights, you are also away a lot, and that's also a sacrifice.
Yes, it's a huge sacrifice that you make, and it's taxing on your body. It's extremely tiring to fly, and the way they structure the overseas flights is you basically, especially for an airline, they want to get as much value as they can out of you. So your trips are as long as they can be, with as minimum there was little time off as possible so that you can rest, and then as much work as they can extract from you coming back again. So you're, and they want to get as many hours per year and per month and per day as they can out of you. So to find a balance and safety and still have an enjoyable, sometimes towards the end of my career at South African Airways, the destinations were getting fewer, and I was flying on the domestic. The destinations were few, and they would make you sign on in the morning and fly all day, and then sign off at night, and kind of unappreciated towards the end. Not to be ungrateful, but there's kind of the sparkle gets lost afterwards, if I can say that.
Yeah, and I think the motivation as well, you need that encouragement as well, or that appreciation to be able to do it.
Yeah. Initially, when you start flying, it's wonderful. I mean, to fly is wonderful, but if you feel like you're being exploited and oppressed, then you don't want to do it anymore. And that's where I am at this stage in South Africa. I'm not prepared for any of the carriers in South Africa anymore.
But now, I mean, you won't be able to fly your whole life. I mean, you will be able to fly quite for a long time, but not for an airline. Is there some? Yeah. Are you thinking of what you will do with retirement, or what you will do when you don't fly anymore?
Well, I'm pretty much semi-retired now, and I've got a beautiful place where I'm living, and on the river, go for nice long walks and fishing and boating and just enjoying the environment. Taking up kiteboarding and just filling my life with rewarding endeavors that are good for your soul and just give you peace.
Yeah. But it must be strange also flying now. Can you still fly smaller aircraft?
No, not at all. I haven't flown anything but simulator for the last 2.5 years. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, unfortunately not.
Okay.
I don't have access to any airplanes here where I'm staying.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
But Marc, but tell me now, your wish for the future would be to leave South Africa and to join another airline. Is that correct?
I would like to go and fly overseas, hopefully in America, on someone's jet. So and fly that. Yeah, that would be a nice balance, because then it will be challenging and exciting, and not too much flying. Not. I don't mind working hard, but I just must have purpose.
Yeah.
I just find that the airlines 900 hours a year or 1,000 hours a year, minimum time, minimum rest, maximum hours. It's just pointless for me personally.
So, but I wish your wish comes true, or your dream comes true, or your vision to go and to be there. And you say you have some options already.
Yeah, I've applied for this visa, and I'm hoping to get it. And hopefully that'll open new doors there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope for you, and really, I feel, for me, it's so disappointing that happened. Not just about COVID, that everybody was affected with, but also that South African Airline, that's no more.
Yeah, it's a great pity, but I wish South Africa the best, and I hope that it does improve its options by being inclusive of the entire populace and not excluding any group. But yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. But I have just one last question for you. What can you do a shout out for your favorite restaurant or coffee shop there in Stilbaai?
It's where my son does a little bit of part-time waitering, and they are fantastic little cafe bistro that have wonderful food and very nice ambiance. Yeah, there's fantastic restaurants here, and
what's the restaurant called?
Sterrehemel, which is Afrikaans for star heaven.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. And what type of food do they serve?
It's mainly like a coffee shop, but with some nice what do you call it?
Okay.
Bistro type food.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sterrehemel. Okay, that's a lovely name.
Yeah.
But it was so lovely to talk to you, Marc.
Yeah, it's nice to chat to you too, Petra. I hope I could.
And it's good to have this up, let people talk about this, because I think it's also important that people understand what's going on. Yeah,
I'm glad that you're enlightening people to the situation in the world, and hopefully can bring about a positive change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if I sometimes think if it's what the people who are there experiencing what they are experiencing and talking about that gives a different insight into things than reading it, say, in the paper or getting it as a perspective from somebody else. So if it's you talking about it and you were there and you experience it, it's also a different way of getting the information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really feel sorry for my colleagues that especially the younger guys that had any form of debt during this time, because the way the company handled us, South African Airways, was abysmal. I mean, they used the situation to exploit the pilots that were you can imagine most young families have a home loan or a car that they've purchased on hire purchase, and they just stopped paying them. And now with COVID, and in South Africa, there was no government assistance or anything like that, and we didn't have access to our pensions. We didn't have access to any form of income, and the young people that I was surrounded by, they lost cars, they lost houses, they were living in their parents' garages. They were forced by the shareholder, the government, the South African government, exploited them to such an extent that they were pushed into a corner, that they couldn't do anything but accept really, really crummy terms of surrender. And the agreement that they forced on us was a quarter of what they owed us. And we were forced to take it or leave it. And 90% of the guys were pushed out of there with a fraction of what South African Airways was supposed to pay them. And it was a take it or leave it situation. If you wanted access to your savings, your pension, your money, so that you could survive, you had to take it. So they will reap what they're sowing, the South African government. And you're seeing it now, their poverty and their corruption that's rife. They are unfortunately going to be brought down to their knees as well.
Yeah, I feel it's heartbreaking, if you think these guys, like you say, your colleagues who have spent all this time and all this money to get into the career, and it's not something that you just, it's not a switch that you just switch off. It's not something you can do on the side. It's something that you really invest a lot of your time and your life into.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not a fleeting thing.
Yeah. Well, Marc, I wish you a wonderful day. And whenever you come to, you don't fly to, well, maybe one day you'll fly to Vienna when you're from America.
Yeah, hopefully.
Would you let me know?
I'll do that. Thanks, Petra. Yeah, I'll look you up when I'm there.
We can go for a coffee here in Vienna.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But have a wonderful, and thank you so much for your time and for this lovely conversation.